My name is Ilan Zemmer. I'm a high-altitude mountain guide with Grajales Expeditions. In the following video, I hope to help you with the daunting task of breaking down all the gear you're going to need for Aconcagua. One thing to keep in mind as you watch this video is that Aconcagua has a wide temperature range. We have temperatures in the 30 degrees Celsius in the approach and up to minus 30 degrees Celsius on summit day. So a very good, efficient layering system is essential, as you'll see in the following videos. In this section, we're going to talk about the upper body layers we're going to use throughout the expedition. Here I have most of the layers I would use in the approach. The approach is often hot and dusty, so I make sure to have several layers of short sleeve shirts. I personally really like cotton, so I bring a couple layers of cotton shirts with me, but I make sure to also bring a synthetic shirt to change when I get to camp, or if the day is cold and after the rest break before coming back down on a acclimatization hike, I can change into the synthetic t-shirt. For the evenings or colder days, I bring this mid-layer fleece with me. I pretty much live in this the rest of the expedition. It has a hood, which is essential, and a very good chest pocket. Next, I have an insulated vest. This is not in our kit list, but it's a personal favorite of mine. I end up using pretty much these 4 layers for most of the trip until base camp. The last layer I have here is the hard shell. Usually I keep this at the bottom of my backpack and only use it on the offhand chance that there's rain, which is very rare on Aconcagua, or snow in the approach, or if it's an especially windy day. And lastly, on the approach, I have a warmer insulated layer for the evenings if they get cold. Next, once we get to base camp, I add a soft shell jacket, and this is pretty much everything I use all the way up to Camp 3, which is Camp Cholera. Again, picking and choosing layers according to the forecast of that day and the altitude that we're going to reach. Usually the guides will let you know what the day is going to look like, and you can prepare accordingly. The last addition to my layering system on summit day is a heavy-duty down jacket. This is an essential piece of equipment on Aconcagua. Please don't skimp on this jacket. It has to be warm, high-quality down, 800 fill or more. It has to have a hood, and if possible, it should have inner pockets that you can use to keep your water bottle warm, your suntan lotion so that it doesn't freeze, and any snacks you bring, which also freeze and are pretty much impossible to eat if you don't have them with you inside of your jacket. In this section, we're going to talk about the layers we're going to use for our legs. On the approach, I like to bring a pair of shorts for the super hot days and a pair of lightweight, fast-drying trekking pants. In case the weather is cold on the approach, and also for the evenings, I have a base layer, and that's pretty much all I use on the approach. When I get to base camp, depending on the weather, I'll either continue to use my lightweight trekking pants for the days that we do the carries, or change into my soft shell pants. These I will then continue to use all the way up to Camp 3, sometimes adding the base layer underneath if I need to, especially in the evenings. The summit day is a world apart. On that day, I have a completely different system. I use the base layer. On top of that, I put on these insulated pants that are lightweight but super warm. Then I cover these insulated pants with hard shell pants to protect me from wind and any chance of snow. It's essential that these hard shell pants are big enough to fit these other layers underneath. Having warm legs is essential for also keeping our feet warm. One of the most common reasons people go down on summit day is from cold feet. With these 6 layers, I can adjust my layering system for everything from the approach all the way to summit day. And now we're going to look at footwear for our expedition. First and foremost, some Crocs or sandals that we're going to use from the first day on in camps, and sometimes there are some years where we have to cross rivers on the approach, and we can use these to do that. Next, on the approach, I personally like to use trail running shoes. I find them lighter and more comfortable, but some people find that because terrain is rocky, they're uncomfortable and they prefer to use the hiking boots from the start. This is totally personal and up to each person. Trekking boots tend to give people more a sense of having their ankles protected, while trail running shoes, again, are softer and much lighter on the way in. I'll start using my trekking boots from base camp up, especially for the carry days. From base camp, when we start moving up to the higher camps, I use my double boots. These are called double plastic boots exactly because they have a separate liner that comes out. Please don't mistake these plastic boots for single wall plastic boots that don't include these liners. We require them for all of our trips. In addition to your boots, you want to bring crampons, semi-automatic or automatic crampons that you've adjusted beforehand and that you know fit your boots. In terms of socks, I'm going to start the approach with lightweight socks. This is really important to avoid getting blisters the first days of our hike. And I'll change into mid-weight socks once I start going up to the high camps. On summit day, I have a pair of heavyweight socks that I keep clean and dry, only to be used on that day. This is really important to make sure that these socks work optimally for you on that day. All right, headgear. Headgear for Aconcagua is not very different than any other mountain you've probably been to. You need sun protection during the day, a warm hat for the evenings and for cold weather, and maybe the one piece of equipment that I would say is specific to Aconcagua or is essential for Aconcagua are the buffs because of the dry air and the dust. And also for protecting your neck on the long walks on the approach. The helmet, we don't use often on Aconcagua, but there are certain sections on the approach and then the acclimatization days that we may use it, especially on the upper part of the mountain. Next, good glacier glasses. Glacier glasses come usually rated with a class system. The higher the number, the darker the glasses. Class 4 for Aconcagua is ideal because of all the sun that we have. Next, goggles, in part as a backup system for eye protection, and also if there's snow and wind on summit day, they're very good to have. Hard cases for both of these take up a bunch of space, but it's very nice to have so that the goggles and the glasses are well protected in your backpacks. And lastly is the headlamp. For most of the expedition, you'll be using it in the evenings in your tent, but on summit day, you're gonna wear it for many hours. So a strong headlamp is recommendable. 300 lumens or more would work well on Aconcagua. And now to finish with the clothing, we're gonna look at gloves. First of all, we have liner gloves and some fleece gloves. These are windstopper in addition. This combination is great for the approach and also for some of the first camps when we move up. Next, we have expedition gloves that we're going to use on especially cold days on the approach and in the evenings and in the higher camps. And lastly, the expedition mittens. It's super important that these are easy to put on. I like to use the liner gloves with the mittens so that my skin is never exposed to the cold. There's the option of bringing hand warmers with you. These are great to have, especially for people that have problems with circulation or tend to have colder hands. Just make sure to open them up and start them and shake them about an hour before you leave for the summit. Let's take a look at backpacks and duffel bags now. First of all, duffel bags. We want them to be 110 liters at least. 130 is ideal. They should be sturdy because remember that these go bouncing around on mules for several hours. And definitely 2 bags because the bags will be separated. One bag will go to the approach camp and the other one will go straight to base camp, and you won't see it until we get to base camp. So it's really important that you bring 2. Next, we have the approach backpack. This backpack should be about 30 liters or 35 liters. It's really only for our extra layers, our lunch and water on the approach. Not much more than that. And then lastly, we have the expedition backpack that's going to go in the duffel bag that goes to base camp. And then we'll start using it when we do our carries and when we move to the higher camps. This backpack should be sturdy and have a very good waist system so that you're carrying all your weight on your hips. The backpack will be about 16 to 18 kilos. So again, a good quality backpack is essential. Next, let's look at our sleeping gear. Basically, it's just 3 items that we're going to use together. First, a foam mat, mainly to protect our inflatable mat from being punctured by the thorns that we're going to find in the approach camps and the sharp rocks in the higher camps. But this is also an extra layer of insulation from the cold ground and from the snow. Again, the inflatable mat that's essential for comfort and also from insulating us from the cold ground and possibly snow. And then lastly, we have our sleeping bag. This should ideally be made out of down, basically because down is lighter and packs smaller, but synthetic packs are fine. The sleeping bag should be rated to at least minus 19 degrees Celsius, which is about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Last but not least, a few essential items that we haven't gotten to yet. Our hydration system. A lot of people like to use Camelbacks, especially on the approach, because they feel that they drink a little bit more. The only thing I would add is that this should stay in base camp. Higher than base camp, Camelbacks are useless. They freeze. If they were to rupture, they would be a disaster. So for the approach, they're great, but leave them behind once you get to base camp. From base camp up, 1 or 2 water bottles with insulation is super important. At night, the water freezes in the high camps and on summit day as well, so we want the water bottle to be protected. A thermos is great to have for the nighttime when we give you hot water and for summit day. Maybe not everybody considers this essential, but the pee bottle for me is. After your first night in the high camps, I think you'll realize what I'm talking about. Adjustable trekking poles, the lighter the better. Suntan lotion, we can't forget this. The sun is super strong in Aconcagua, and if it could be 50 SPF, that's ideal. Our eating kit, a plate, some silverware, a cup, a towel for washing our faces when we get to the approach camps, and also for the showers in base camp. And lastly, a power bank. It's not required, but highly recommended. All right, so you've made it through the whole video. Congratulations. I hope it was useful for you. And now you're ready to pack your bags and come visit us in Argentina.